Welcome to the Better Business, Better Life podcast with me, Stuart Wilkinson, and
Dave Jaggs.
With
We're
Dave
back.
Jaggs.
We've
Welcome
done it.
to
3 weeks in a row.
I don't know if we're in a. I don't think it's consistent enough yet to be like, oh yeah, we're flying.
Is this like a Wordle streak? You know, like you get your kind of hot weeks. It's like how many can we get it to before it
Correct.
breaks?
But it was. What is it like? How long does it take to form a habit? Is it like it's like 6 weeks or something, isn't it? 8 weeks or something.
Oh,
something like that.
Isn't it a daily thing? So like X amount of days. Anyway, we're still going strong.
Yeah. So, Dave, how's your week been? How was last week?
Last week was really good. Lots of positive things happening at work, which has been good. Like actually the sowing seeds, and they're all finally coming to fruition. Do you know what I mean? Like things that I was kind of working on almost like 6 or 8 months ago, which is good. Because I think you kind of get into that point that you start to snowball, don't you?
Exactly.
So that's really positive. Other than that, actually, just had sick kids. So I think I was fighting off a nipping turtle between the hours of 11 and 2 today.
Yes.
Brains in overdrive.
Yeah, for context, for all listeners, so me and Dave both have kids pretty much exactly the same age. How old's Florence, Dave?
She's just turned 3.
She's just turned 3, and my oldest Poppy, and my oldest Poppy is 2, and she's 3 in July, and then
pretty similar.
And then our youngest are a week apart.
Yeah, I think so.
6
About
months?
a week or 2 weeks apart. Yeah, 6 months.
So
Florence's mind is on overdrive. It's like role play central. Everything is like, can you eat this cupcake, which is actually a glass of water, or whatever. So obviously she's read a book about a turtle, and I was fighting the turtle off between the hours of 11 and 2 last night whilst Sophie's dealing with a snotty baby.
Yeah. We had Parker has got her first tooth coming through, so that's wonderful. So teething, and it probably wasn't too bad last night, actually. But yeah, so sometimes these podcasts may go rogue with 2 parents who have to deal with toddlers and newborns, babies anyway. So last week for me, I didn't actually come prepared with my story, but it was some really good client conversations last week, actually. And a couple around, and I know we've got this label for a podcast episode, actually, quite a few around systems and processes for customers at the moment, and technology, and how, using Xero more efficiently. And I know we've done ones in the past about Xero, but there is a surprising amount, like a lot of people are not using Xero to its full capabilities. Like I would say 90%. And people go, yeah, but it's just an accounting software. It's like, well, no, it's actually the financial heart of your business and can tell you so many things. So there was actually a number of conversations with clients last week around how we can help them not only get better information, but help streamline things, save time, do things smarter. Because how you get the information is Xero.
It's this weird thing, isn't it? It's like people are cost sensitive at the start, so they want to set it up themselves. But then a byproduct of setting it up themselves is they never truly understand the capabilities that it's got. And then suddenly they've kind of got in at this level. It's like, I think there's a lot of softwares out there like that, particularly in the construction world, like, Archie Pro and all of those types of ones. People have got these things, and it's like, you actually need to sit there and do all of the webinars and the trainings to truly actually understand the power it's got.
And what might work now, down the track, as Cherie, who's our CFO, we were talking about a client, and we were talking about the process, and they were wanting to go a bit manual. And while that's great manual, that you kind of fast tracking stuff, as she said, but the risk is then human error. So then you're going to make mistakes. So it was just really interesting. And I think, so we've got that on the agenda at some point the next few weeks. We'll talk about systems and processes and stuff. So
on a random side note, did you do the Miro Next course?
No.
Or like out? Yeah. Watch out.
Those are the basics.
Miro Next. The new release of Miro.
So for listeners, we 3 months ago, 4 months ago, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, we've started to use a tool internally called Miro, which is in simple terms an online whiteboard, but it's been really good with us. Dave's in Tarrant and I'm in Auckland, so when we want to put down ideas for the podcast, we can all go to our virtual whiteboard and put down ideas, clip in web pages. And I think for me, that's another episode we can do on the podcast of apps that help you be more efficient.
Definitely.
We've done a lot of focus on that at work. So anyway, that is not why you're here, probably to hear about our Miro boards. It was the budget last Thursday. But yes, before we get to the what was, and look, I guess I guess I've always balanced, do we have an opinion or do we just try and state the facts? I think it's probably important that we do have an opinion on things and sort of say our thoughts and not be like, oh, Labour or National or whatever, but actually, hey, from us who work and with small business owners, what's our thoughts on it? So, Dave, what was your takeaway from the budget?
I think it's hard to go past, it's just a bit nothing key really if you're in the kind of industries that we're in. Do you know what I mean? I think if I was still a business owner, I'd probably be thinking the same thing. It's just kind of a whole lot of nothing really. And I guess, right, don't switch off now just because I said that, thinking this podcast is going to be a whole lot of nothing. I guess
end of podcast. It's a boring budget.
It's harder to go, all right, how are we going to utilize this for our customers and how are we going to utilize this for benefit, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? There's nothing in there that jumps out at you and goes, oh yeah, this is the one. Do you know what I mean? You've got to be a little bit more kind of, you got to dig a bit deeper. But at the same time, coming from somewhere where England, National Health Service, it's good to see that they're investing into that health sector and doing those things, because I think that does need to be done. So I'm not going to complain about those things. I just think from a business side of things, there's probably a little bit more they could have done in specific areas.
Yeah, I felt it was very underwhelming on all parts, to be brutally honest. I think there's a lot of money being thrown around, and climate and health were the two main ones. You can't disagree with that. That's fine. But when you get into detail, out of the 11 billion for health, 3 billion of it's just to clear the debt of the DHBs. And you're like, cool, we're getting nothing. So and that has to be done as part of, amalgamations. It doesn't matter whether it's a government entity or a business, that's part of process. But there's nothing for me in the budget which really goes, okay, we've got some economic headwinds that are going to be a little tougher with interest rates, inflation. How are we going to help business succeed, help business be more productive, competitive in a global marketplace? I just think it was, I don't know. And we'll go over some of the numbers. Dave went some of the policies, but what a lot of people miss this actually is in the budget, the Treasury also give their economic update of the country for the next 5 years. So often the headlines in the news around, 11 billion for health and X amount for climate, and apparently we're going to change our cars and all that kind of stuff. You get that headline, but part of also is the numbers of what the Treasury see ahead. And there is some really interesting stuff there. So I think we'll kind of have two parts today, a little bit of the podcast, as we'll talk about where the government wants to invest and spend money. And Dave's done a really good bit of work on the apprenticeship scheme, which is kind of one thing we do think is really cool out of the budget, because there's actually more in there than you probably think. And then secondly, we'll go over the numbers. But the other thing I'll have, and this is a rant, it is quite clear that, one of the headlining acts was the cost of living payment, however many billion we're going to spend on that. But then Treasury Treasury advised the government that may increase inflation. And I'm just like,
I just think there's smart things you can be doing. It kind of feels like they're trying to buy votes, doesn't it? A little bit.
Seems hugely political.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest, and this is controversial, giving someone 70 grand a year, an extra whatever it is, $300 over 3 months, what the heck's that going to do?
It's not going to do anything. And especially because it's only for 3 months. But it's not like it's actually going to stimulate the economy by a big enough payment that they can go and do something with it.
Exactly right.
Yeah, it's literally just...
Exactly right. So...
I don't know. It's probably going to get just consumed in the coffee shop, I guess, which is that a bad thing?
Well, exactly. Or, and get driven into, where's most of it going to go to? Foodstuffs.
Paying for a bit of fuel.
the petrol stations. Yeah. So
Um,
anyway, well, we'll get into that. That's my little rant of. I just think it's that I guess that concerns me a little bit when we look forward of going, well, the government are obviously under a bit of pressure around the cost of living. And look, we're not the only country in the world that has been not caught short, but we have put a lot of money in through the
yeah.
COVID aspect. Like the UK reported, what was it, 9% inflation, 8% or something
Yeah.
inflation last 2 weeks ago. And they're in a world of hurt. America's the same. They've got really high inflation. And these countries obviously have put a lot of stimulus into the country. But the other thing that annoys me a lot about the government at the moment is, this is not Stu's political rant, is we keep comparing ourselves to the UK and America, but we never compare ourselves to Australia, where inflation is just over 3%.
Well,
anyway,
I guess that comes down to it, doesn't it? So maybe for anyone who is listening and is kind of a bit new to the budget side of things, there's probably things that are affecting the budget right now that are worth just still acknowledging. And it's like everyone's kind of let COVID go, but it is still massively affecting everything that's going on in the economy and therefore the budget. Inflation is up. Health system is struggling. Like they're struggling with staff, they're struggling to employ people, they're struggling to kind of meet the demands, which is why they've obviously had to go that way. And then just the Ukraine and Russia could probably not have happened at a worse time from the point of view of maintaining economic instability. So I think that's probably why the budget is a bit ho-hum, is everything's a little bit uncertain at the moment. But you are right in the fact of drawing comparisons. It's like they're drawing comparisons to England, which was totally ravaged by COVID, the USA, which was totally ravaged by COVID,
correct,
rather than countries that weren't, such as Australia.
And are in the same...
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And look, the Australian economy is made up very different to us with their natural resources and stuff. One thing, I think often people miss is they go, oh, well, okay, so how is Ukraine and Russia's, the war affecting us here in New Zealand? And two ways. Like the main one is obviously the talk around oil and gas prices, because Russia is a main oil producer, and then there's obviously flow-on effects around sanctions and that kind of stuff. But the second one, which most people, I'm not saying you might be very well aware of this, but Ukraine in particular is one of the biggest agriculture producers of things like wheat in the world. Okay, so the big flow-on effect is that there are now now we're not reliant on it as a country, but a lot of Europe is. And so all this flow on, there's always secondary and third effects to disruptions on that magnitude when, hey, I am a country, get most of my wheat, which makes bread and things and for flour and that sort of stuff from this country, and now I don't have that. There's a shortage that drives up prices, et cetera, et cetera. So there was, especially Ukraine and also the lower part of Russia, they are huge agricultural engines for the global economy and resourcing. So that's why the war on the Ukraine, yes, there's the oil part, but there's actually also a huge agricultural flow-on effect to the economy. So I think that's...
I think also we're beginning to realise, aren't we, that it's not a flash in the pan. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. Do you know what I mean? Like everyone kind of expected it to be over in a month. Unfortunately, one way or in a good way or a bad way, but unfortunately that's not the case. So everyone's kind of starting to bed down, and it's going to kind of be the way it is for a little while, unfortunately, which is sad.
I think it is, and it's same with COVID, isn't it? We're talking around that. I saw in the Herald, I think it was yesterday, that cases in Auckland are up 75%, and the winter wave and stuff. Like we are going to have this disruption, with this well publicized, the disruption with China again, because they're coming out, I think now, but they've been in a little big lockdown. And so that obviously the global supply chain. So we've done obviously a couple of last couple of weeks is about inflation and stuff, but I think it's really important people understand the wider context of why these things kind of play, as you said, Dave, play on the government's mind here a little bit on what's going on. So let's go into some of the headlining acts and where we're going to spend some money. I think the most important parts are for business. So, Dave, you picked up quite quickly the apprenticeship scheme aspect, and I think linked to that is there is a huge amount of money being spent over on infrastructure. So 61 billion for the next 4 years. So that's great for construction industry, supporting industries knowing work's on the way. But then obviously there's skills. But you've done a lot of work on the apprenticeship scheme,
so
Dave, so you don't want to talk
I guess
through...
I kind of just wanted to look through the budget and try and spot areas that I can utilize for my clients. Yeah. I guess that I feel fundamentally that's my job, is to go and look through it, read things, understand it, and go, all right, what areas can we actually look to utilize? So I think
Yeah.
I'll bang on about it all the time. Labor is short. Staff culture is important. Trying to work out how to retain your staff is probably even more important right now. I think you've kind of highlighted there that they think that the labour market's going to drop below 3% unemployment, which is massively unsustainable. So you need to work out how you can actually provide something of value to your staff. And for me, the obvious one right now is skill development. And that would be looking to utilise the apprenticeship support scheme or apprenticeship boost scheme. So they've put 230 million, is that right, into that area? Or is that a figure I've drawn up from somewhere? Anyway, so they've put heaps of money into the apprenticeship boost scheme, which they had actually done during COVID, but they're keeping it going. Okay, so it's not
316. 300.
So they had it going during COVID, and they're going to be keeping it going again. Now, the bit that most people aren't aware of is the fact that an apprenticeship isn't just like a Sparky or a builder or, I don't know, maybe a high ropes type course. There's actually all the way down to retail. So you could put someone who works on your retail floor, so whether you are the local dairy or whether you own a homeware store or something like that. And I think I'm currently just trying to work out whether you could use the retail one for something that's customer service related, because you can do it for bar and front of house as well. So you can actually put them onto this apprenticeship scheme, which you may be thinking, okay, well, why would I want to do that? Well, the truth is, one, they get an extra qualification in their name, which is good for any member of staff who's looking to strengthen their CV. But two, the other side of it that I'm particularly interested in is you actually then start to pick up some perks from the government in the way of wage support. So for someone who is on their first year of their apprenticeship scheme, you get $1,000 every month towards every employee who is on that program.
It's not an insignificant amount of money.
It'll pick up a salary most weeks for whoever's doing it. Do you know what I mean? It'll pick up one salary out of four effectively. And you got to think, like, the apprenticeship scheme it's not totally onerous. Do you know what I mean? It's not like they're going to be studying 24/7 to be able to do it. Quite a lot of it's common sense if people have been in there. But what it's doing is it's actually giving these guys some skills. It's giving them some qualifications on paper that will help them down the line. And also, as I was speaking to a company this morning, it's something for you to advertise. If you've taken your team through something that is like a bit customer service related, that's a good thing to advertise. It helps to build in kind of confidence with your market. So why would you?
Well, and you value training, you value development of your people. Yeah. Like, it's something you put priority on. I think it's such an important thing.
I guess for me, the apprenticeship boost scheme was something that I was like, well, that's directly tangible and it can help our clients. So how can we look to utilize it? And I think don't rule it out until you've explored it as to whether there is one in there that supports you. I actually downloaded the full list yesterday, so maybe we can put a link up in the podcast for it, because it's really extensive.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
It's huge.
So is that the list, Dave, of all trade, all occupations?
Yeah, so it's all the different apprenticeship schemes you can do and who all the providers are, because they're privatized. And so who the provider is. So literally this is like, look through, see if you can find one that suits you and give them a call and find out the details. Because at the end of the day, it's in their benefit to get you on. So I'm sure that the process isn't going to be too challenging if it's actually suitable.
Correct.
Definitely worth exploring.
And I think it's just, and I think, that when and it doesn't matter, I guess, where you are looking, but it's whatever your business are, if you're looking at taking on junior staff, you go, oh gosh, I've got to do all this training and blah, blah, blah. Well, as you said, Dave, one, there's some wage support there, which is quite a significant amount, to be brutally honest, with the level you're starting at. But secondly, that support you're getting on training, knowing they're going to get best practice training as well. They're going through a really rigorous training program that will get them up to a certain qualification, and especially with, you've got certain, in the trades, for example, whether you're a master electricians or whatever, it's getting you up to a really good standard. So I think it is a huge thing, which, as you said, I know a number of clients that have in the past have always looked at apprentices as a really good way of future-proofing their business, because otherwise you're all fighting about over the same person, and that is just isn't going to.
I'm not totally sure on
and that's just.
I'm not totally sure on the 100% the schooling system in New Zealand coming from England, but I think they come out with that like level 3 and then level 4 certificates, which, you know, it adds into your the kind of the qualification stack that you've got in the business as well. So
that's fantastic.
Just needs to be explored.
It does need to be explored. So we'll put some link we'll get Dave's link, put that in there. And you know, as Dave said, look, I think probably the lesson you take from this, Dave, is you may think you're in an industry that's not supportive of apprenticeships, but actually have a look first before you rule it out, and then maybe worth exploring. So that's really good. The other big part, which was kind of in some ways I like it because it's quite innovative, but then in other parts I've got some questions about it, is the number they talked about this investment of capital for SMEs to allow them to grow, and the fund is literally equity. You know, it's like private equity aspect.
I don't know how I feel about this.
Business growth fund, it's called. My first comment: 100 million is not enough money. Like, it's a drop in the ocean. Like, what's 100 million going to get you? That's my
depends
first
who they target, doesn't it?
I like. Yeah, like maybe it's a starting point, but yeah, you put some good questions here. Do you want the government to take a stake in your business? Yeah, good point. And it's through another entity, but let's be honest. And will they just be picking winners, and what is their criteria? Yeah, like there's a few. Like, I think if they partnered with, I don't know, someone like the Ice House or someone like that, I think that would be really interesting, where you've got an established organization that deals with this market, really experienced about investment in mid-sized and growing businesses. I think, you know, it's how they run it, I think, is going to be really interesting. But I think if there's something they see as an opportunity, they should have probably put another couple of numbers.
The side of it that I'm really interested in is like everyone has a different level of success. Yep. So someone may be happy to earn $50,000 to $70,000 a year because actually that suits their lifestyle, where they live, so on and so forth. And then someone else actually may want to be, I don't know, 6 figures plus. So how is the government going to look at each individual entity and be like, yep, I'm happy to take a stake in that and put some money in? Like, how do you compare apples with apples in a scenario like this when you're kind of very broadly sweeping at like small to medium enterprises? You know, it's something that I think you challenged me on in my first interview. It's like, what does this profit and loss statement mean and the balance sheets mean? And it's like, well, the truth is you don't know unless you talk to them. And are they actually going to be talking to them to find out what they're working towards in a business?
Yeah.
I just fundamentally struggle with the fact that the people who need support are going to get it, rather than they're just going to be investing into companies that look good on paper and are probably going pretty good anyway.
Yeah, and I think it's the interesting aspect is what that then means for the governance of your business, which is kind of what you've raised there, Dave. And look, but let's be frank here, like investment, whether it's angel investors, whether it's growth funds, whatever it is, individuals that invest in business, there is expectation often when you're investing that there will be a return. Yes, there's risk, and people go, but hi, I'm going it because I believe in this business, I believe in the vision, what they're about, I believe in the people that run it, I think they've got the capability to move forward, whatever it might be. But the idea being is I'm going to put in X to get a Y return. And I guess often you see, and we've seen that with some of our customers, that when you've got shareholders who have got different goals and different outcomes they're looking for a business, it can lead to interesting conversations and often takes the business owner away from focusing on growing the business and running the business really well and keeping it doing what it needs to do. I think it's creative, and I think there's in some ways I really like it, but there's a lot of meat to be put on the bone, I would suggest.
Well, I've always kind of advised clients in the past to say, if you are going to bring on an investor, an angel investor, you know, they want to be providing that capital kind of to get you going, but also what else do they provide? Because these guys are obviously normally quite successful businessmen.
Yeah, what capabilities,
so like,
what skills?
Do you get them as a sounding board? Are they going to sit down with you once a month just to check that you're like, challenge your thinking? Because if you don't get that, then I don't believe that, I feel like you're missing part of the benefit. You're missing the benefit of having someone else invested, you know, not just because of the fact they've got a stake and they've given you some cash. I'm talking, they want to see you succeed, so they pass on their knowledge and information.
Correct. Correct. The other parts that affect business, and we've got a few clients in the agricultural sector. This was launched under the huge sort of climate emergency response part that they've talked about. There's a big part here for agriculture and about supporting the agriculture industry and developing technologies and research into emission mitigation programs and solutions, and also how to implement low emissions on farm practices. So 380 million there, million in capital to sort of get that going. So, there is some bits and bobs there around, climate was a huge part here. They're putting 1.3 billion into that whole transport aspect, and with the cars and all that sort of stuff, which was plenty of evidence every year of the importance of climate. And so look, there's plenty around there, but the headlining acts, if I go through what they want to talk about from the government point of view on their documents, is the cost of living of what they've done there, the amount of 11 billion onto the health system, and as you said, Dave, like I think the one thing you've got to say to the government there is they are trying to forward focus it. They're not trying to just look at what's next 12 months, as they're looking at putting some serious capital behind the health system to move itself. And if we've got a healthier society, that's only a good thing. 3 billion obviously into climate emergency response, what they've called supporting business growth, and then they've got this supporting Maritime Pacific aspirations, which that's a very broad term. Anyway, so that's kind of any other on the initiatives before I get all geeky on numbers.
Not really. I guess the only kind of side of it that we haven't kind of touched on yet is, they've put obviously a huge amount of money into housing and infrastructure to secure things going forward and that side of things. But to be honest,
yes,
I don't see how they're going to spend that when labour is so short and supplies are so short. You can put all of the money into building houses and, improving New Zealand's infrastructure. But when unemployment is so low and you can't get staff, how can they actually justifiably spend it? Do you know what I mean? Does it just get consumed higher up the ladder by engineers and things like that rather than people on the ground making some of these things happen? I don't know, but it's an interesting topic, isn't it? Because it's like, actually, is it a chicken or an egg? What came first? Because it's like, we've got the funding, but we don't have the people. Or do you need the people before really it needs the funding to make it happen? I actually
you made the money. So,
I got told a little joke, which I thought was quite funny, by a builder the other day, and he was saying how delivery drivers at the moment who are driving around Jib probably need armoured guard, because they're just going to get Jib swiped off the back of their truck at a traffic light because it's in such short supply.
It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. So, like I said at the start, that one of the things you get with the budget is kind of the Treasury's update and their view of the next 5 years. And so, what I spent last night reading the first 27 pages of the 163-page budget. I didn't read the whole.
Wild Monday night,
but it is interesting. Oh, crazy at the Wilkinson house. But I think what it is interesting is just to say, what do we see coming here? And, there is some numbers getting thrown around, especially currently with inflation and unemployment levels, that, as businesses, uncertainty and not being aware of what's potentially coming up is kind of is a blind spot. So I think for business owners, when we go through some of these numbers, it's just, and look, there's no guarantees these are right. There's obviously things happen in the world, and things can change quickly. But I think it's really important when you're making decisions for your business on where you put your investment, where you put your time, the more information you've got the forward path. So I do think that's hence why I think it's really important to sort of spend a little bit of time talking about this. So a couple of things I've done is I looked at the budget and I've looked at ANZ's key takeaways, and look, all the banks have them. I just picked ANZ. And they'll have their slight variances, but the themes are pretty much the same. So in the budget, I think the key things I thought was really interesting was they acknowledge that the labour market is tight, and they forecast this is going to remain tight for the next couple of years, with it decreasing, even going lower, they say, unemployment to 3% in next year. So for me, I think this, and this links to the apprenticeship scheme and stuff like that, Dave, really is, this isn't going to, we're not going to suddenly open our borders and things are going to change. Now, maybe the number doesn't get to that level. As I said, look, who knows? It's hard to make predictions the further out with confidence. But going on that, we do then have to, if you're a business owner, we have to look, okay, well, if talent's going to get harder and harder to get, what are the other investments and what do I need to strengthen strategically my business to help keep growing it? Because I can't rely on just keep getting more people to do what X, Y, Z, whatever it is your business is. So I think that's a really interesting part. The other part, which was acknowledged in the budget, is consumer confidence is at its lowest level in 18 years. So that is going to start to have a trickle-down effect into people. Am I going to do that renovation? Am I going to buy a new car now? All those things have, again, flow-on effects to it. But one of the things that they do talk about is they do start to put some numbers behind this. So like I said, unemployment they see going quite low over the next few years. But the big thing also is inflation. They're not saying it's going to get below 5 for another 2 years. Only going back to like even 3.6 in 2024. So we are going to have pressure. Now, the other interesting part around this, which I think is the most important part for business owners to think about, is they are predicting that the wage increase is going to keep increasing. So in the next few years, they're saying wages are going to increase up around 5 to 6% every year for the next 2 years. And I guess that is the other key part to this, is that, if you look at your wage line and go, okay, next year that's another 5%, and the year after another 5%. So that is obviously a cost to you, and depending on your business model, that's, whether it's your margin, your operating expenses, doesn't really matter, but that cost is going to go up. And the expectation of your staff, obviously in tight labor markets, there's going to be plenty of opportunities for people to go, and hence why we're getting that increase there. So I guess, there's a couple of things there that really you've got to kind of just start thinking of. I guess I had
a strategy session last week with one of my clients who is a quantity surveyor, and it was really interesting. So she's English. I seem to attract them, I'm afraid. And she's had a couple of interviews and a couple of good ones, but they're not totally sure that they're kind of going to be the right fit for each other. And I challenged her as to why has she not looked in the UK? Inflation's high, not particularly great setup over there at the moment. So like, she's come from England and loves it out here. And I'm like, why would you not go to the UK? And she's like, I just didn't think you could. So we kind of actually sat down during the session and just explored it a little bit further. So on the skill shortage list for New Zealand, obviously at the moment, they're really kind of loosening up on immigration from the point of view of, if you are on the skill shortage list, you can get in quite easily and quite quickly. And as an English person herself, she already knows where to advertise and to look. And just using it as a bit of an example, it's like, I know you can do the same in physiotherapy. So it's like, well, actually, maybe now that is the time to not get scared of those things like immigration and advertising abroad, but actually go and look overseas for some skilled staff. Because some of these people, I live in the Mount. It's pretty nice.
Tough sell. Real tough sell there, Dave.
Do you want to come and join us?
Come from Birmingham and to the Mount. How do you feel about
also, that? Also, the glorifying thing is part of these contracts that you actually put in as part of the deal with immigration is they have to stay in employment for at least 2 years.
Yeah.
So if they don't stay with you, they need to go to someone who is going to match the immigration criteria. And for a lot of these kind of industries that are professional, you hit the criteria pretty easily. They're not overwhelming.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So maybe now is the time to actually go, all right, I'm going to give immigration a call and I'm going to work out how to advertise overseas. You could either use recruitment agencies, or a lot of UK guys look at Seek and start just looking at things like that as a way of kind of trying to negotiate around the labour shortage.
Correct. And I think you're right with, as two people from the UK, I think we are qualified to say that the UK political system is a cluster at the moment. There's plenty going on there.
Where'd you start?
Where do you start? Partygate, copious amounts of lying, Brexit.
Partygate is actually brilliant, isn't it?
Anyway, yeah. Well, I don't know if you saw last night the photos of release of Boris having a beer in lockdown. Just Jesus Christ. What is going on? What is going on in the world? We have Donald Trump and Boris. Anyway, there's probably some people in the podcast going, I really like Boris. Please, just, anyway, if someone can't do their hair properly, should they be prime minister? Anyway. But I think the thing with the UK is interesting in a number of ways, and especially when you look at professional services and qualifications and stuff. You think like legal system and that sort of stuff. There's such close ties with the practices. We know that from accounting, from even the tax and all that sort of stuff. The UK tax is very similar to Australian and New Zealand tax. Legally is based off the UK, obviously from the Commonwealth days. But there's such close ties with skills there that it isn't this big leap of they're not going to know the practice. Yeah, there's always going to be training, but it's the same if you get a grad or whatever. They're going to be experienced with customers. They're going to be experienced with clients. They'll be experienced on the one thing you get with UK, if you think about something like surveying, there's a chance they've got a broader set of experience because of the range of projects you might be more open to because of the size of the UK economy and the opportunity of that. So, yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think the other one you put here, Dave, is the US. Is a huge market with the US. And
you've got to think a lot of the systems are the same. Like Xero is worldwide. They use Xero in the UK. Do you know what I mean? So actually, a lot of the systems and processes are the same, and Xero actually tweaks a few of the boxes. So you'll need support when it comes around to doing annuals and things like that if it was in an accounting side of things and like the intricacies, but actually a lot of the general legwork doesn't actually change.
It's pretty much the same.
So I think there's lots of things.
And I think, we're worried around obviously the brain drain of, people have missed out on their OE now go, cool, the gates are open, I'm going to go. So it's going to be plenty of people that are, maybe just have got to start to have young kids or thinking of young kids, done the first 10 years of their career and gone, geez, do I want to be stuck in Birmingham? I don't know. Like Birmingham's not that bad a place, but it's Birmingham for the next 10 years. And then they see a invite for the Mount or wherever, Wellington or Auckland, where they go, hey, this is an opportunity for me, walk into a good job and try something new. And
also it's a different lifestyle, which is the big thing I think I've found with physios in the past is the chances of a physio in a hospital in the UK working 40 hours a week is very slim. It will pretty much jump to 50 by the time you have handovers and everything else. So when they come out here and they see a contract for 37 and a half or 40, they're like, yeah, but how much overtime am I actually going to end up doing? It's like, no, not in New Zealand. It's like, you're done when you're done. And it literally just blows their minds.
And then you can go for a walk on the beach.
The salaries aren't the same. Quite often we are lower here. However, the lifestyle is just not comparable, and they've come from a place where it's been the opposite way around, and actually they want a life.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. The other thing, other sort of note I've got on the numbers, which is again just kind of bear in mind, is one of the things they talk around is the economic forecast, and so one of the stats that the Treasury put out there is consumption, and they call about it, there's private consumption, so us, and there's public consumption, which is the government and that sort of stuff. And then they also break down investment from residential investment and business investment. Interestingly, they are predicting in 2022, so next year, there will be a decline in private consumption, massive in public consumption, and also that the investment will be mainly in the business sector. So residential investment will will only grow by 0.9 next year, and business will be 6.6. So I do think there is also some interesting changes in the dynamics of where investment may come and where dollars are going to be spent and that sort of stuff, which again is really important for people to sort of just think about when they think about, well, who's my market? And we talked about this a bit last week, didn't we, Dave? Who's my customer? What's going on in their world? And some of the numbers the Treasury are putting out kind of gives you a bit of a hint of what's going on. So that's the budget 2022. Like there's plenty of things you can. It's amazing when you start reading the budget how much you can get into. But I think the big thing is employment's going to be still really, really hard for people to get good people. Yes, there's some really good initiatives around the apprenticeship scheme and getting people good. If you see people with great attitude, you've got then opportunities to get support on training them up and all that sort of stuff. So I do think there is some good opportunities there. The employment part is kind of the key part.
I just think it's more highlighting the facts, isn't it?
Think ahead.
The budget is kind of firming up thoughts that we've already had. So takeaways are actually make those calls about apprenticeships and make the calls to immigration around your industry, how could you potentially bring people in? Because it may just be that thing that starts bringing in good stuff to your business, which will make you a clear standout moving forward. One, being able to get staff, and two, having good stuff.
Correct.
So I think it's just time to keep thinking slightly outside the square and pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. So don't just stick to what you know.
Yep. Awesome. All right, Dave. Thanks again. Make sure everyone, hopefully you liked this episode, subscribe wherever you're listening to your podcast. And if you can, give us a rating, a good one, obviously. And make sure if you have any questions or episode suggestions or things you want us to go over on the podcast, email marketing@rightway.co.nz. Feedback is always welcome.
Cool.
But thanks very much, Dave.
Speak to you all soon. Next Tuesday, round 4.
Round 4.